Hello, everybody. Welcome to the morning show. We're broadcasting to you on Channel 9, as well as WJOP-LP Newburyport, Joppa Radio at FM 96.3. We're also available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm really happy to welcome today's guest. Frank Cousins is here. He's going to help us learn how to spot and avoid scams and frauds. And he is just the person to do this. He was Essex County Sheriff for 20 years. Prior to that, he was a state rep, and he also was on the Newburyport City Council. He also was president of the Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce for 3 years. Currently, he's serving in a temporary appointment for the city of Gloucester as their chief administrative officer. In sum, Frank has seen it all. So Frank, thank you so much for taking time to visit the morning show today.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, I was hoping that we could start just by filling in something about the severity and the extent of scams. Just how common are scams these days, and who, Frank, typically gets targeted for them, or is it an equal opportunity criminal endeavor?
Well, I think, the world of technology has changed a lot, Mary, and I think that, that's really, just out of, for your viewers and listeners, clearly, you have seniors that are targeted, you have baby boomers like us that, we're not fully computer savvy, but we're trying to understand, and things are shifting more to that now because of the pandemic. And of course, when you look at 20-year-old kids like my son, they're ahead of the curve, and they're really using their iPhones and devices a lot more than we would anticipate. But I break it down into two categories. Clearly, our seniors, which are our probably most vulnerable population, that can be targeted easy. They could be living in, high rises as a group. They could be living in complexes like we've talked to the group out in Byfield. And then of course, the baby boomers that can be, that are trying to shift and do online banking, and they're trying to do bill pay through that process. And there's those big changes, not going to banks as much as we traditionally would go and deposit our paycheck and maybe get money out to pay bills or whatever it might be. So I think it's a two-pronged approach where both categories really to stay educated and really understand what's going on with this type of security problem today.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense what you're saying, Frank. Both the seniors who are not as computer savvy as younger generations, but then the younger generations are using the internet for almost everything. And so I'm sure that just opens up opportunities for hacking and all kinds of things. So, well, Frank, what are some of the types of scams that you've come across? Do they follow a typical pattern or approach?
It's a little bit of everything, I think. And, one of the things that I tried to educate the last group I spoke with, clearly less people have hardlines than ever before. So, again, you're moving to a mobile device, a handheld device. So clearly on that handheld device, if you don't have a laptop, you can get emails on that. You have to be very careful when you open any of those emails, especially if you're a senior. Things, for example, we all think of Home Depot. We use that as an example where we look at the colors at Home Depot when they advertise or they're online. The documents that might come from a scam will look like it's a legitimate thing. You can get a gift card from Home Depot, and you look at the color and you say, oh, it's a $50 gift card. All of a sudden, you open something like that up and you give out some personal information, you've got a problem. So I think that, a lot of these things clearly on handheld devices are visual. And then you've got the other type of actual calls that will come in on your cell phone. It could be someone saying they're calling from the IRS, for example. Yeah. The IRS does not call anybody. So do not give any information to anybody that says they're calling from the IRS. Your own bank. So if you're, one of the great things in the Greater Newburyport area, we have great local banks that people traditionally do business with. They might send you an email. Our suggestion is you call them and speak to someone in bookkeeping if you have a problem or a question with your account. Do not give information to someone, say, hey, I'm calling from a local bank, and give them information. I'll get back to you. Boom, you call back, tell them who you're calling, You'll get a personal line if you're calling the institution or the 5 or the prop bank, and then communicate with the person, and they'll ask you some information, then you can give them and check on your account. But these type of things can be very, very tricky. The other scam that we see a lot with seniors, they might know if you have a grandchild or a grandson and say, hey, Johnny's on a trip right now. He's one of the islands or down in Florida. We need you to send him some money. And we find a lot of seniors will, try to do something electronically, or they might even get in their car and go to the bank and take out $2,000 or $3,000 and try to mail it to them. Do not mail anything to anybody that calls and asks for anything about a loved one or a grandchild that needs help. So those are some of the real signals that we see a lot. Things that remind you of something. We use the Home Depot. It could be something else that you're used to looking at, and it could be color coded. It could be like a Walmart type of thing. Do not fall for those, and do not open them on your handheld devices.
Yeah. There's two things I pull out of what you're saying, Frank, that I think are both really important. One is they use things that look familiar. And you mentioned the color coding, because we're used to, like PayPal, for example, which has that little kind of double P, about the color of your sweater, Frank. And I think they're called phishing emails. And it looked just like the PayPal logo. But there was something about it that just didn't seem quite right. And so I actually sent it to PayPal, and they wrote back and said, no, this didn't come from us. So just because something might look familiar, in other words, and use something that looks like a familiar trademark or a familiar color, that doesn't mean that it's legitimate. And the other theme that comes through is like with both the grandparent scheme that you were talking about, and also phone calls or emails from places like the Internal Revenue Service, or sometimes Social Security. These raise people's anxiety level, I think. Oh no,
they really do raise their level, especially issues around car insurance, Medicaid. We see, as we all know, Medicaid has certain times a year we have open enrollment for long-term care. So you'll get some scams attached to that. So you're going to be very, very careful. I mean, people are rightfully so very conscious of what they have for their supplement with Medicare. So that's one to be careful of. And, I worry about that. And also, some people are moving to bill pay, which is fine for your Verizon and, maybe DirecTV, some of the, natural gas, Keyspan, that type of thing. So be very, very careful with that once you move over to it and they take it out, and you can review that monthly out of your account, which is fine. But along with those come the scams of, solar panels, that type of thing. We're getting a lot of that. We're hearing a lot about that. So you got to be, careful on that. So I think as you consolidate these down and figure out what you pay monthly for, your important type of bills, and if you do write a check or you do have them taken out of your account, that's fine. But you just got to be real careful of the things that follow up behind them.
Just to clarify, Frank, like with solar panels, would the approach be then to offer somebody, like a deal on solar panels, or a substitute account for their regular kind of a national grid account? Is that the approach?
Yeah, it's just like in the old days where we would have people would come around and drive by your senior's house and say, look, we can hot top your driveway for X. And they would take advantage of them. You're not seeing as many of those. So now it's shifted to, a solar panel thing. They know you're in a home. It's your home. You've planned to live in your home as long as you possibly can. And then they go after you. Look, we can help save with your electricity bill. And you get into the whole, that piece of solar panels. So you're going to be very, very careful of those type of things. This isn't going to cost you anything. There's just a deposit required. So we've heard a lot of those type of things. And the other thing I tell people, and I spoke to the group out in Newbury, wherever you live, which is really important, don't be afraid to call your local police department and ask for the police inspector. So if you're in Newburyport and you call down and you ask for Chris McDonald, he's great. He'll call you back. He deals with all of the court issues and a lot of these larceny type things. And those are types of things that are very important. Calling down Newbury to the police department, they'll get right back to you. And I think that's important around when I talk about solar panels. Anytime we're seeing issues around, window replacements, some type of work around your house, there's a ton of stuff that's coming in the mail.
Yeah.
And, we used to call it junk mail.
Yeah.
So that would be an alert also around types of improvements on your home if you're still living in your home. So again, they might call and follow up. Did you get something in the mail for us? Be very, very careful of that. So they know where you live. They send it to you. Now they're calling to follow up. They might ask for some type of a charge card number or account number. Do not give any of those numbers out to anybody on those type of home improvement type scams that could be coming down the road.
Yeah. In other words, caution is the byword. And it's helpful to know that it's absolutely okay to call the police.
Absolutely.
That because some people might hesitate, thinking, shouldn't I?
We encourage that. When I was a sheriff, we had a triad program that would go out and it would be seniors and law enforcement together. I know that my predecessor has done it, but that type of dialogue around these type of things that come in the mail, home improvements. We talked about medications, that type of Medicare, people that try to sell types of plans on top of what you might have. So you really, you have to, be careful with those type of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Frank, spotting scams often appears to me to be kind of like playing whack-a-mole because it's been a long time since any of us got emails from the Nigerian prince. Okay, right. Okay, but as people learn about things like the grandchild scheme, I'm under the impression that new ones will then arise, new approaches, and so how does law enforcement?
And that's an important point when you talk about new approaches. I can share this. I sit on a bank board. And, it's a publicly traded company, so I'm not speaking out of school, but those new approaches that are coming down the pike around cybersecurity are so important. And the word alone sometimes could scare a senior. What does that mean? Right. And, it means it's out in cyberspace and someone can, try to correspond with you to get you to invest in something, to purchase something, to give important information. Your social security number, date of birth, your license number. So don't give any of that information out to anybody on the phone. And I think you hit it on the head with that, because we're seeing more. And I think that, clearly lending institutions to protect citizens are putting more into fighting that. And because it's the way, no one's robbing a bank like Bonnie and Clyde and going up and going in to take currency out. You might see a few of those cases, but the real threat is the cybersecurity into someone's home, into their handheld device, into their laptop, and trying to reach out and take advantage of people. Yeah.
So important to emphasize that, Frank. Thank you so much for that. Is there any way that the public can find out what some of the latest schemes and scams are? Is there like a database or anywhere that they're listed? Or would that be something you could call the police about as well?
Well, you can do two things on that. You can call your local police. I encourage that. I think it's a great thing to have. If you have a group of seniors that want to, communicate, the local police inspector or detective from whatever community will come out and speak to that group at a senior citizen center, for example. Those are very informative, where you have a patrolman come up and talk about that, or the inspector. And the other thing, which I think is great, and I know that our local banks do it, they have nice little, so if everybody's social security check is a direct deposit now, as we know. So if you feel like your listeners want to go to the Institution for Savings or the Prod Bank or the Newburyport Bank, for example, and go in and ask the teller, they have little cribbage sheets that will tell you the do's and don'ts. We handed those out when Mrs. Noyes did the program out in Newbury, Byfield. And they're very, very informative. So you can get them from your local banks. And I think it's great. You go in and you talk to the teller, and the branch manager will communicate with you and reinforce, do not give Social Security, all the do's and don'ts we just talked about, and give you a little cribbage sheet to help you out, which I think is great.
That is great. Really good to know about that. Thanks for that, Frank. Really a good tip. Well, I wanted to ask you about another type of fraud as well. One in which it's not that scammers are asking you to provide with the information, but they've gotten it without your knowing that it's been stolen. And you don't know that your identifying and financial information has been stolen until you apply for a mortgage or go to withdraw some money from your bank account and it's not there. And it's only then that people find out that their identity has been stolen. So Frank, fill us in a little bit about how is it that people are able to steal that information, and what are the typical kinds of things that people will do with your personal and financial information once they've stolen it from you?
Take a little thing like a driver's license, and you think about today how easy it is to get that information. Simple taking a picture of someone's driver's license. Oh, I like to take a copy of your driver's license. Click, and then they can have that information instantly, or a social security number. They talk you into taking a picture of it and sending it to them, texting it to them. A little thing like that can really be a problem. And all of a sudden your information is out there, and then you'll have to go back, deal with your person who does your taxes, clearly report it to the local police department, and then go the whole process of, changing charge card numbers. If you got a charge card, maybe you might even go to the registry and change your driver's license and have a new license number attached, and then deal with the unfortunate thing of dealing with the Internal Revenue Service around, your social security number has been targeted, and they have a whole set of series they do to combat that. So it's a very complicated issue when it does happen, and it can happen in seconds once they get that information. And it's, you take a charge card number, you give someone a charge card number, they can go and max that out in a matter of minutes. And so it's not a bad idea to, when your charge card expires, if you have a MasterCard or a Visa or whatever you're using, after it expires and before a new one is issued, call them and have it issue again with a different number. There are little things like that you can do to protect yourself, because people traditionally say, geez, well, I've had this charge card for 10 years, I'm used to that number, I know what it is. Maybe after 3 or 4 years, change it up, call them, and it doesn't cost anything to do that.
Yeah, I think credit card companies will be happy to, they are happy to do that for you, especially if you let them know that you think there might have been, that somebody might have had access to it. And so, yeah, there's something to be said. If you've had the credit card for a long time, you can memorize the security code on the back. You don't have to flip it over, but it's better to be safe than sorry and just ask for a new number. I think that's a really great idea. You're suggesting just every few years. So, and perhaps driver's licenses as well, especially if you know that somebody has taken a photo of it recently. So, so anyway, those are great ideas. Thank you for that, Frank. I wanted to ask you, Frank, people are often, I think, embarrassed if they've been scammed to talk about it because they feel ashamed of it. But I'm imagining that if people don't talk about it, it can be harder for law enforcement to track what the scams are. And so I'm wondering what message you might have to say for people who have been scammed to encourage them to not go to a place of shame or embarrassment, but to talk about it and to report it.
Yeah, we had a very emotional person who had been scammed down in Byfield, and she was very gracious to support and share what happened to her. So I think she felt a little bit better after she did. It was a large amount of money that was taken advantage from her. But my big thing, if you feel not good about something or just how someone's approached you, usually your first instincts is the most important. And I think that when that happens, I suggest immediately for everybody to call their local police department immediately. And I think that if you share it with the, clearly the senior citizens director, like in the city Newburyport, and you're up there and you go up every day and you say, I had a call yesterday and it was a little, and you share that with her, she'll immediately call the police station, have the police inspector come up, share that information with them, and let them investigate that and look into it. And really get out in front of these individuals that are preying on our seniors and taking advantage of them. But I think the best way is to open that line of communication up, and you'll, even if you get taken advantage of, you're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah. And if you talk about it, you can find out then that you're not the only one. You're far from the only one.
That's right.
That there's a lot of company there. And somebody once, I was talking with this about a scam artist to somebody, and she said, well, Mary, there's no reason for people to feel embarrassed or ashamed. They call them artists for a reason.
That's right.
Because they're very, very good at what they do. In fact, there was another thing I wanted to ask you about, Frank, along those lines, because when I hear about the really callous behavior of scam artists and the cruelty of the outcome, sometimes people really they can lose their life savings in some scams. And it seems totally amoral to me to do that to somebody. So I always wonder about the kind of person who would victimize others in this way. And I wonder what you have learned about the profile of people who commit this kind of crime.
Well, I was a big statistician when I was the high sheriff, and there's an interesting article that came out today on Boston.com, which is affiliated with the Boston Globe, and it talks about how many people have died in America this last year for drug overdoses, and the number is over 100,000 people. It's a very alarming number. And with that number, and it talks about the different states. So, and it's a huge increase over the year before. So if you think about that for a minute, all of the work that had been done before the pandemic about treatment, mental health treatment, drug and alcohol abuse, you've got a huge number of people dying. And now you have a huge number of people that are using again and in homes, not coming out, maybe depressed, spending money, taking advantage of seniors, taking advantage of their own mom and dad. And, especially around charge cards and running those cards up. So that's probably one of the most scariest things that I think that coming out of this pandemic, which we've got still a little ways to go, that the number of people that have relapsed, fallen back into a life of drugs and alcohol or crime, how do you fuel that? Well, we know how to fuel it. Taking advantage of seniors, taking advantage of mom and dad, taking money out of people's checkbooks, taking charge cards, which we just talked about, or any of these other scams that we're talking about. So that fuels a lot of that in the criminal justice system.
Well, that's fascinating, Frank. In other words, there's a real kind of synergy between the huge problem our society has with addiction and people looking for ways to scam and catch and get money, sometimes even from people that are close to them or their family members.
Absolutely.
So thanks. That's really, really interesting. I appreciate that. Well, let's talk a little bit more about prevention then, Frank. You've already shared some really good ideas, like the to go to your bank and get one of their do's and don't sheets. Are there other types of advice you have for people? For example, I often hear people have gotten so accustomed to talking on their cell phones in public, in crowded places, and I'm often kind of amazed at the kinds of things people will talk about. They lose track, it seems to me, of their environment. And so I wonder if there are things along those lines that you have to suggest that people just be aware of, like when they're at the ATM or talking on their cell phones. Or
I think that, and I was talking about this today, and I think the whole issue with cell phones, any additional training we could get the seniors, I think would be really well served, because what's going to happen, I was just talking to someone today that just came back from Hawaii, and Hawaii's done a very good job around this pandemic. And one of the things that they require is they want to see your driver's license, and they want to see your card that you have your vaccine.
Oh, yeah.
And if you've had your booster shot or a flu shot. So we think about that as a senior, how important that is to us. Well, do you carry it in your pocket all the time in your wallet? No, the reality is a shift to have that in your handheld device. So think about that for a minute, how we have to train seniors around that important data that's going to be right in your handheld device. Here's my information. I have my vaccine. I've had a flu shot. I've had the booster. There's a picture of myself with my ID. Is it in your Google Wallet, or how do you put it in that device? So I think probably one of the great things that could be coming up to help all seniors is really training around how to secure our handheld device, how to put the information that we need immediately in it. It could be around, prescription medication.
Yeah.
It could be clearly around, that card that we have for our vaccines and shots. So I just think that type of training in the future is going to be really important for seniors, because, how do you control these passwords? And you think about it, you write them on a piece of paper, you have them on your nightstand or a table in your house. How do you load them in your cell phone and have them where you can access them for when you need them? And I think that type of training is going to be huge in the future.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Frank. This has just been wonderful, so informative and so helpful. I really appreciate it. I did want to ask you one more thing.
Take your time.
I've been so impressed at the life of public service that you've lived. You spent your whole career in public service. And I just thank you for that, for one thing. And I'm just curious to find out, I believe your current gig at the City of Gloucester is a temporary one. I'm just curious to find out, do you have plans for what's going to be the next chapter for you?
Well, no, look I was very blessed that I always say this, that the governor and the district attorney agreed with the mayor to dust Frank Cousins off to come down and help out a little bit in Gloucester. And I'm very grateful for that, because they're both good public servants, as the mayor is. But I've had a wonderful time. I was in the private sector for probably 25 years before I got in the public sector. And I think it's important that we have good public servants that want to help people and serve in government in whatever capacity they can. And in this time where there's a lot of unfounded fear for people, around the pandemic, we hear a lot of negative things about people that serve in public life. I really think it's imperative for us to be positive and want to do good things. So I'm grateful for that. And in the future, I'll probably do a little teaching. I like teaching around criminal justice issues. Clearly, the drug and alcohol issue is something that I've been involved with for almost 40 years to try to keep young people heading in the right direction, including our seniors. So those type of things, I'll have some input in little in, but I'm going to kind of wind it down a little bit. And I've had a great career.
Well, it seems like you've earned some wind down time, but I can hear that your passion for service is still very much alive in you. And I hope that whatever you start doing, come back. Let me know. We'll have you on again and you can talk about it. All right. Frank, thank you so much. It's just been wonderful. I really appreciate your taking the time to come on the show and teach us how to spot and avoid scams and frauds. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you very much. Yeah. Bye-bye, Mary.
Bye-bye. Take care now. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll hope you join us next Thursday at 9 on Channel 9 for the morning show. If you missed any part of today's show, it'll be available for viewing on Port Media's YouTube channel, playlist for the morning show at www.ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon. Each show will also air on WJOP FM 96.3 on Friday at 8 a.m. and again the following Tuesday at 4 p.m. and Wednesday at 3 p.m. It will also be available as a podcast on the SoundCloud. Just go to ncmhub.org, click on the cloud icon in the upper right-hand corner and scroll down. That's it. See you next week, everybody. Bye now.